an experiment that a bunch of researchers did in 2013, where they got mice to be afraid of cherry blossoms. Not just the mice they were experimenting on, but also their children and their children's children. And this is how it happened. The researchers got a group of mice to smell cherry blossoms and at the same time gave them an electric shock, which means that the mice got really scared whenever now they encounter the cherry blossom. And did this enough number of times for them to start fearing the cherry blossom as soon as they encountered it, even if there was no shock associated with it. Now, when these mice are children, and those children were exposed to the scent of cherry blossoms, they were also afraid. They ran away from cherry blossoms even though they'd never been exposed to an electric shock before when they encountered a cherry blossom. And the similar thing happened with their grandchildren. And then the researchers got together and sort of collected the DNA samples from across these 3 generations of mice and analyzed them and found out that the parts of their DNA that was responsible for responding to the scent of cherry blossoms had a few chemical tags on them. Almost like someone had put post-it notes saying, remember this matters. And this was getting inherited across generations, which was what was causing the fear. This is called epigenetics. It's nature's way of modifying a DNA sequence without actually modifying the baseline sequence itself. So your ATGC remains intact, but the actual functionality changes because the tags exist. And once these tags are off, they continue to operate like they did before. So if we can write fear into DNA using chemical tags, what else can we write into DNA? Text, photos, videos, documents, all of the data ever generated in the world. Now, when you use Google Drive and put in a photo, or you go to OneDrive, put in a document, it goes into massive data centers like these. These data centers consume a lot of space. Many of them are as big as football fields. They consume energy of the order of megawatt hours, which is 100,000 times the energy that homes like yours or mine would consume. This is not sustainable and not scalable, especially given how much more compute we need to get to getting AI to really function the way we want them to. So then we asked the question, what happens if we store all of the world's data in DNA-based chips? This would mean that we no longer have big warehouses burning energy 24/7 to keep our data up and running. So we'll have systems that are quieter, smarter, and significantly more convenient to use. You could literally store hundreds of petabytes of data in a chip as small as this, controlled by fluids, connected to silicon devices via voltage fluctuations. These chips could then be slipped into your pockets and stored safely in drawers. So why aren't we walking around with DNA storage chips already? The reason is this. Today, the cost of storing your Spotify playlist on DNA costs more than buying a car. Why? Because everyone who's attempting to store data in DNA is doing it like medieval monks, copying books by hand. They're writing it letter by letter, page by page. And they take your data, zeros and ones, convert it into a DNA sequence made of A, T, Gs, and Cs, and chemically create them from scratch. And the caveat here is also that once it's created, you cannot rewrite it, which means that you're buying an expensive permanent marker when what you need is a pencil. How do we now make DNA data storage affordable so that we can reap all the benefits of this technology? That's when we come back to the question of the mice DNA. So what was happening in that context was that the DNA sequence was never modified, but there were chemical tags added to it so that certain information could be stored. We asked the question, can we do the exact same thing to encode digital data in DNA? Can we use chemical tags to encode photographs, videos, documents in DNA instead of creating DNA from scratch so that it becomes rewritable. This is the breakthrough that we've made at BioCompute, where we are now able to encode data into DNA using this approach, making it pocket-friendly in the more metaphorical sense. Dynamic changes in materials is what drives human civilization forward. DNA data storage is just the beginning, a tipping point into the strand age, which will follow the silicon age. And in that age, we would then be doing complex computation using a combination of DNA and RNA. Using proteins is potentially the hardware for quantum computers, and using molecules to discover other molecules, which could then be used for drug development that saves millions of lives. The possibilities are endless. Nearly 50 years ago, computers were this huge, took up entire rooms, and could only do very simple calculations. We now have computers that you can hold within the palm of your hand that are 100x more efficient than this. And the advancement happened because of the advances that happened in the silicon world. Today, data centers are at the exact same place that computers were 50 years ago. But silicon can no longer save us because we've reached the limits of how much denser silicon can get. And that's when we look within, quite literally, and identify carbon, which is the building block of the oldest storage medium that we know of. Close your eyes for a moment and think of this day 10 years from now, when you're thinking wistfully of this rainy evening when you were at the Bangalore Creative Circus, listening to a crazy entrepreneur talking about storing data in DNA. And when you want to rewatch the talk, you pull out your phone and the DNA storage chip in there retrieves this talk from the deep recesses of the World Wide Web, all of which now fits in the palm of your hand. Thank you.